Hi, hello and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then hi, my name's Zoe. Please subscribe, please join my little family that I have here on YouTube. It'd literally mean so much to me. So today I've got an interesting video, as you can tell from the title, and as people know who've been watching my channel for quite a while, I'm into everything creepy, everything unknown and true crime and all that jazz. And literally I found a story online. It's obvious it's probably not true, but I like to think it's true because it's such an interesting story. So I thought I'd come on and I'd read the story to you and see what you think. So let me know down below what you think of this story, but I am going to be reading it off my mobile and I'll put some screenshots on screen so you can read along with me. I don't know who this person's name is to give them any sort of credit of who's wrote this. What I'll just do is I'll just put a link down below as well. So the person starts off by saying, I'm writing this down, A, to help me process what happened, and B, to create some sort of written record. I'm a Disneyland employee and have been for 5 years. I started running a concession stand, moved to ride operator, then into resort operations. All the while I was pursuing a degree in psychology with the intentions to become a psychiatrist someday. After I graduated, I continued working at Disneyland, and while I applied to grad school, to my surprise, Disneyland offered me a job. Something that would allow me to work in my field, in brackets, kind of, and to stay in the park. Job title, mental health assistant. I've been in this role for exactly a week, and then it says first week / worst week / last week. I haven't been fired yet, but let's just say I'm expecting a call. And then it says, let me just back up a bit. He goes on to say, deaths in Disneyland are rarely reported on, courtesy of the sophisticated PRT of a 168 billion company. Suicides, in brackets, anywhere, are also rarely reported on, and that shouldn't surprise anyone. So what do you think happens when there is a suicide inside a Disneyland park? It doesn't happen. Not to the outside world anyway. Families of the victims, innocent bystanders, or anyone else affected by suicides inside the park generally go away with generous cash offers and thick non-disclosure agreements. A disturbing online community has developed over the past year, a group that encourages its members to kill themselves in Disneyland. It is called the Disneyland Suicide Pact, or DSP for short. Their stated purpose is to serve as a metaphor to eliminate the stark contrast between the happiest place on earth and the utter horror and darkness of suicide. A metaphor that people who are happy on the outside can be dead on inside. For some, a call back to when they were last happy. I think the actual purpose is to terrorise innocent people, to forever pervert happy childhood memories for the handful of people who happen to see the aftermath of suicide before the staff clean up. The suicides have become more frequent in recent months, leading Disney to create the mental health assistant role. They told me that I was the ideal candidate, someone young and hip enough to speak the internet language of the DSP community, someone well versed in the park itself, and someone with a psychology background, however major that may be. In the 2 weeks preceding my job offer, 4 suicides happened in the park. Kelvin Goodwin took a fistful of pills, then got on the Star Tours ride, died in the middle of it. Clifton Hedges pretended to fasten his seatbelt on the Guardians of the Galaxy Tower ride, made his way off the elevator near the top and jumped 200 feet down the elevator shaft, dying instantly upon hitting the top of the ascending elevator cabin. Patrick Brahill climbed off the Pirates of the Caribbean boat and hid in the Pirates lure scene. He slit his throat and bled out. He wasn't found until the next morning. Jenny Davis scored an overnight stay in the highly coveted Prince's Castle, only to jump to her death in the middle of the night. And I bet you've heard of none of these. And they're not in the news, they're not in the list of incidents at Disneyland Park Wikipedia page, they're not on YouTube, they're nowhere. That's the power of Disney PR at work. I'd like to think that Disney wants a trend to stop out the goodness of their hearts, but let's be real, it's all about the bottom line. If the witnessing patrons or the victims' families talk too much, despite the non-disclosure agreements and cash settlements, it can have a lasting effect on park visits. A $168 billion company can keep a lot of people quiet, but how many? In my first couple of days on the job, I generated a fake online persona for Dave Karat, a name I thought of while driving past Wendy's, founded by Dave Thomas, and then when looking down at my coffee cup, lid imprinted with Karat, creating accounts on Facebook and a few others. Once it was believable enough, I applied for the Disneyland Suicide Pact online community, approximately named the Imogenation, and I was accepted a day later. Just to be clear, you don't have to make the Suicide Pact in order to join the Imogenation. Anybody can join after a light vetting. Once you're ready to join the pact, you undergo a heavy vetting, something that Dave Karat probably wouldn't pass, and you are awarded a Mickey Mouse badge that accompanies your username on the site. After being accepted, I began clicking on all the usernames with the Mickey Mouse badge, trying to determine who the next victim may be. I quickly flagged 4 users as short-term risk, those that talk seriously about suicide in the park and appear to be planning a trip, but one stood out above the rest. Her username was Beauty or Beast. Her profile picture showed a gentle girl with long blonde hair, probably 16 or 17 years old. She was very forthcoming about her life, detailing her reasons for suicide and why Disneyland was her ultimate venue. She mentioned the nostalgia of the Haunted Mansion on 3 different occasions. I saw her and others talking extensively about Death Day a couple of weeks earlier. Upon a bit more investigation, I discovered that Death Day referred to December 15th, the day that Walt Disney died. December 15th was only a few days away. Beauty or Beast mentioned that her family were planning a trip to California during the week of December 15th, and that she may, in fact, be in the park on Death Day. Someone suggested that perhaps the stars have aligned for her. I private messaged her asking her what her plans were, saying that I may be in the park for Death Day. She messaged me back quickly and said she wasn't sure, that she doesn't want to ruin the day for her family. My heart broke. I asked if she'd do it in the Haunted Mansion. She said she didn't know. Of course, she did know. That and so much more. She told me her plan was to push for her family to go to the park on December 14th. Then she'd say she was meeting a friend and ditch the family just before park closing. Really, she'd hide in the park overnight. That's something that's much easier for people to think than kill herself right before the park opening on Death Day. I knew that the online community was a toxic place for her, that if I could talk to her in person I could help her. I told her to message me when she knew her plans, because I might be there too. She told me she would, and her name was Shay Kane. On the morning of December 14th, I messaged Shay to see what time she was getting to the park. She didn't respond. She had changed her profile pic to a photo of Walt Disney with blacked out eyes. I spent most of the day standing in the security control room watching the turnstile camera feeds. It's common for at-risk kids to change their appearance shortly before committing suicide, especially girls, so she must have slipped through unnoticed because I never saw her come in. I messaged her a few more times, telling her that I was in town and that we should meet up or even meet in the park somewhere. She never responded. Before I went home that night, I showed Shay's picture to the overnight security staff and let them know to keep an eye out. I hardly slept that night. The next morning, I headed to the park at 7 AM, 2 hours before open. I gave printouts of Shay's picture to the morning security team, then walked to the Haunted Mansion. Disney is very thorough in their security camera coverage of areas where patrons are, but not so much behind the scenes. Disneyland speak for employee-only areas. That meant I had to physically inspect every room of the Haunted Mansion. After a fruitless hour of walking through the eerie empty ride, I continued to search through the rest of the New Orleans Square, then Frontierland. About 20 minutes before the park opening, I got a call from security staff. They saw a female similar to the picture I gave them walking around the backside of the haunted mansion. I rushed back to the ride. I barged into the side employee entrance and immediately started calling Shay's name. There was only a couple of minutes before the park opening, so the ride was now running. Music and sound effects and all. I moved through the haunted graveyard, the seance scene, the beheaded groom scene, all the while yelling Shay at the top of my lungs. I felt defeated. There was a million places she could have been hiding. Finally, I made it to the dining room scene. The ride moves along the mezzanine level of the two-storey dining room. The scene features a large, elegant dining table with gold place settings, all caked in cobwebs and dust. There is a tall fireplace, floral wall mouldings, high chairs, the ornamental windows, holograms of ghost dancer in the room. Finally, I found her. She was standing on the mezzanine level, but over the railing about 15 feet from the tracks. She was holding a rope in her hands. Her hair was cut short. Shay. I climbed into the railway and shimmered across the decorative mezzanine. I was worried about the whole thing would collapse since it was built for show, not to support actual people. She looked up at me. She had been crying. "Who are you?" "I'm Rich," I said. "What are you doing here? Can we talk?" She held the rope up for me to see. Her eyes followed it to where it had been tied around a fire razor behind us. I sat down next to her. "Tell me what's going on," I said. We sat in silence for nearly 2 minutes. I watched the ride cars go by, grinning ghosts come out to socialise. Playing in the background, they hadn't let people on the ride yet, which was a good thing. Eventually she warmed up to me and began talking. She opened up about everything going on at school, at home, in her head. It became clear that she didn't want to kill herself. She had thought about it a lot, but then when she came part of the Disneyland Suicide Pact community and heard all the talk about Death Day, which happened to coincide with a planned family trip, she felt that it was her time. After about 20 minutes of talking, she paused and looked down. "There's something else," she said. You can tell me anything, I said. "I'm not the only one." "The only one? What?" "Death Day. I'm not the only one who planned to kill myself on Death Day." A pit in my stomach grew. The room began spinning around me. I started thinking about my research into all those forums that had talked about Death Day and about how Shay was the only one that was for sure going to be in the park that day. "Who else?" "Oh God," she said, and brought her hands up to her face. "Rich, I was supposed to be a distraction." "A distraction from what?" My mind racing 1,000 miles an hour. She began sobbing. "It's a small world." I stood up, not knowing if she was making it up to get me away or if she truly was a distraction. "Come with me," I said. "I'm fine, you go," she said. I pursed my lips and buzzed my medical on my walkie-talkie. I told them Shay's location inside the haunted mansion. They were already waiting out back. I also told them to send a team to It's a Small World, that we might have a situation there. I climbed over the railing and ran through the ride and to the front entrance where the hordes of antsy people were waiting for the ride to open. I ran past them, setting off a chain of whispers among the crowd. "What's he doing? Who's that guy? Did you see his face?" I called the ride operations and told them to close It's a Small World, that we may have a suicide attempt, potentially multiple. They said that they hadn't opened yet anyway due to a mechanical issue, but they would keep it closed until the situation had been cleared. The park had only been open for a few minutes and it was already crawling with people. I began running across the park when I got the call. Small World didn't get my shutdown order in time. The ride opened for a few minutes after our call. What happened? "You better head over here." I continued running and soon joined by medical teams in yellow jackets also running towards the ride. One of the park ambulances drove by. Bewildered guests jumped out of the way. As I got closer to the entrance of the ride, the real horror began. People, men, women, children, were crying. many hysterically. One woman stumbled out of It's a Small World's emergency exit and threw up violently into the hedges. I heard screams from inside. I stopped one of the medical staffs running out of the emergency exit. What the hell? It's bad. It's really bad. I pulled my employee badge out of my shirt so that it was visible. Part guests in line began stopping me. "Sir, do you know what's happening?" I ignored everyone, hopping for the fence and beelining for the emergency exit near the entrance. People were still climbing out the boats, following the emergency light into the exit. One of the ride operators came on loudspeaker. "Please kindly exit the boats, we're safe, and follow the arrows to the nearest emergency exit. Ride operators will assist those who need help. Parents, please shield your children's eyes through the Scandinavian exhibit." Parents carrying children fly past me on the emergency path. "Keep your eyes closed, sweetheart, we're almost there." What were those people? Why was everyone screaming like that? Are those people hurt? Pit grew in my stomach as I moved through the North Pole exhibit and into the Scandinavian room. Then I began to smell it, the overwhelming stench of vomit. I started to notice vomit tracked through smeared footprints along the walkway. For a moment the music kicked back on. And the ride began to move again. Although it appeared that everybody had been successfully evacuated, the music startled everyone. It's a world of wonder, a world of tears, it's a world of hope and a world of fears. I turned the corner and immediately felt my stomach turn violently. About 10 bodies dangled from the ceiling, spread throughout the exhibit. Beneath the bodies, all were bulging eyeballed and kinked necks. The model Scandinavian children swayed back and forth in their white snowsuits. There's so much that we share, and it's time that we're aware. The medical staff scrambled around trying to desperately reach the bodies, gently swinging about 10 feet above the ground. "We have to get to the ceiling, go." I couldn't bear the sight any longer. The pressure in my face intensified until the tears began streaming down my face. Hot tears, tears of death, tears of loss, of failure, tears of hundreds of friends and family members that would be impacted by these suicides. I climbed back through the emergency exit, through the North Pole exhibit and into the sunlight. I caught a whiff of vomit and felt like churning my stomach again. I ducked behind one of the hedges and vomited. "Are you okay, sir?" one of the guests waiting in line asked. I looked at him. "Go find another ride." I radioed the medical staff asking if they knew she had made it out the haunted mansion safely. I began walking that direction. I waited to get an answer. Eventually they came back on. She appears to have left. I was shocked. Like, have they let her go? No, she made it back to the medical office and slipped out before she was evaluated. I began running to the medical office near the front of the park. The closer I got to the front gates, the more chaotic it got. The crowds, the families were running for the exits, the customer service lines were packed. 50 people back, guests demanding refunds, I imagined. Disney's are great at covering up incidents in isolation, but when 10 people commit suicide on one of the busiest rides right at the opening, it's hard to recover from. The medical office was nearly empty since the suicide victims had all been taken by ambulance to various hospitals in the area. I took a deep breath and looked around. So eerily empty, so void of life. I walked out the back door of the medical office and I looked around. I wondered if the pandemonium had spread the entire park, or only to those that had seen the ambulances and medical staff running around, and those who saw the direct aftermath of the suicides, of course. I walked along the service road behind Disney City Hall, looking through the fence into the thick bush that lanes beyond the park boundaries. There stood Cher. She stood about 20 feet behind the fence amongst the trees and bushes. She saw me and took a step forward. I opened my mouth to speak, then I realised I had no idea what to say. She smiled, turned around and disappeared into the bush. Out of everything I saw that day, Cher's smile is what I think about most often. Was it one of gratitude? A smile that said, "You saved my life"? Or was it more sinister? A smile that said, I played you for a fool. She told me her job was to serve as a distraction. Whether she was planning on killing herself that day or not, she succeeded. And that is the story, and that really just gripped me all the way through. Like, imagining that a company with so much money possibly could cover something so big up. We would just never know, because a lot of people would just keep it secret after getting a handout of money. But obviously that is just fiction, and that is what I like, is creepy stories. So if you enjoy creepy stories just like I do, then feel free to send me some creepy stories on Twitter or on Instagram. Go and check out my socials, I'm always active. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Please subscribe, and I shall see you in Saturday's video.